And we're live. Episode 7?
7.
PEO Speedwagon podcast. Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to this special episode. You may have noticed that we're in St. Louis, and so it's kind of the,
It's spring break week.
It's the spring of deception, though. It's the false spring where we probably have another cold snap left.
It's happening right now.
It's actually happening right now. Yeah, there's a storm rolling in, and it's going to drop about 30 to 40 degrees.
Yeah, it's going to be lovely. It's going to be lovely.
But you clearly are very decked out for spring.
Well, while it's also spring deception, it's also spring break week. And so, it appears people are either going to the beach or, going skiing or snowboarding. It's kind of the places people go from here. So we're representing both parties.
I have not warmed up from winter yet, so I'm running cold. So
Okay.
I have the layers on. I got a vest and a hoodie, and I have refused to enter into spring yet.
Yeah.
Much like the weather. So,
well, I am cold. I'm making a sacrifice to wear this shirt and to execute this theme. So, yeah, let's get on with it.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, we'll get you in a hoodie soon enough.
Okay.
For this episode, what we're going to be diving into and what we talked about a little bit earlier was matching up the right PEO with the existing HR that's already in place.
Yeah.
And so extremely crucial to make sure there's a great match between those. We even, kind of likened it to a jigsaw piece fitting in perfectly. There's already existing structures, and then we're bringing in new ones, and each of them is extremely unique. And so I guess I wanted to kind of start from the top. Let's say somebody approaches us, they're looking for a better way to do HR, a better way to maybe have a PEO engagement or relationship. Maybe they're already with one.
Mm-hmm.
And so they've approached us with that idea of improving things. How do you start the process of looking at the HR system they already have and, really learning what's going on in the inner workings there?
Yeah. I mean, it depends on obviously who the conversation is starting with. If it's a business owner or CEO, it's talking to them about not only why they're interested in the potential of looking at an outsourced HR model, but what exists today, what's working, what's not working, who's running it, who owns it, and just really kind of getting an understanding of the comings and goings of HR in the organization today. If we are connecting with an organization or a PEO rep is connecting with an HR leader, it's really just understanding what they have at their disposal to run that side of the business, whether it's manual systems that they built over time, something that started with an Excel or a Google sheet and now has become the way that PTO is tracked, to what the journey has been from payroll and where the shortfalls have been moving through different providers. Do you have integrations with your benefits, benefits broker to administer it through like a platform like Employee Navigator or Ease? So it's just getting a very clear picture of what's going on now and understanding how it got there.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And the diversity of these different organizations. I mean, you can have small, medium, large HR installed, and that doesn't mean anything about the size of the organization. They could just have a very robust HR already in place.
Yeah.
And then they could be remote, hybrid, or, everybody on site within an hour or two of the actual location. I'm sure that those are all factors that go into aligning that other jigsaw piece to them.
Yeah. Yeah. What I feel is often the best way to do it, albeit it's not the most fun. It's really just understanding the tactical side of HR in a business. So if you are talking to, for example, an HR leader, VP of HR, even a CHRO, it's what do you have set up that works as a function of a system or a service? And understanding how those things spider across the system, influence and touch employees at what point in time through onboarding to offboarding, like does that all occur? And then does that accomplish everything that needs to occur in order for you to have an effective HR platform across your business? You have to start there, because then you can truly understand if those systems were put in place to allow that HR leader to go do something else. Because what I find is there's often two types of HR within a small to medium-sized business. There is someone who has grown up in the organization, maybe come from an administrative role, office manager role, or just came in truly HR, and then is kind of just running what that small to medium-sized business can support. There's also some that come in and have either been homegrown inside that organization, or are a really like classically trained, highly skilled HR person who's really focused more on organizational development, growth, leadership training, and really just elevating employees. And so it's important to know where they are and what's important to them, because there are different types of HR people that like different things. And does the current environment support what that HR person wants, right? So in the world of HR outsourcing or PEOs, if you've got someone who really likes doing the administrative work, if the manual processes or semi-manual processes of moving different forms and policies and tracking things is something that's really attractive to that HR leader, then outsourcing it really isn't a great idea. Like that, they're not going to want to give up is so much of that administrative burden, if you will, because that's what they enjoy doing. And there are people who really do like that and get fulfillment from that. But if that HR leader is somebody who wants to be working with the employees, fines, managing compliance, administering payroll,
learning and development,
and they want to get to learning and development and all those kind of things, then you've got, HR outsourcing is really attractive, but they have to understand that this is not a threat. And that's often the biggest misconception.
Yeah, a lot of HR leaders see PEOs sometimes from a distance, who might not engage them as adversarial to their positions or maybe the growth plan for their department. So you're saying that, and of course we're saying that they actually go together, and it has to do with the right match for them to commingle.
Right. They absolutely can go together. That happens by understanding the environment, kind of what we talked about already, and getting a detailed look into what's already been there and what that journey has been. And then ultimately what that HR leader wants for their organization. Because if you've started this conversation with the president or CEO and they've gotten the HR person involved, or if you've started with the HR leadership and representation there, like you have to know what they want from this. And the first thing they want to know, most commonly, is that they are safe. Some will really dig into that and truly understand it, or some will understand it very quickly. And that often is heavily predicated on what the HR service model is of a prospective PEO. Because there are some PEOs that can align and attach to a highly strategic HR individual, someone who's focused on organizational development, highly focused on culture, working through salary and compensation plans to make sure that their employees are paid at or above the marketplace. And you can attach a certain PEO to that HR person and really make the organization very dynamic. On the flip side, though, if you've got someone who is really focused more on the tactical, and there isn't a big opportunity for heavy transformational HR impact, then you need to find one that matches with that individual. And so it's giving them an HR and payroll technology that really saves them time, but makes them more dynamic. In the manufacturing environments, we had an opportunity to talk to an organization this week that is in manufacturing, and they value so much like their HR person being in the factory with their employees, that it would never make sense to outsource that individual.
Right.
That cannot be replicated. But give that person the tools and resources to spend more time with those employees, manage the administrative burden, and delivering a layer of safety services and risk mitigation around things in the areas of workers' comp. Like now you've given somebody a PEO that really matches that current human capital that exists within the HR department.
That's awesome. So you're saying that it can almost be an industry fit as well. I mean, there's going to be
absolutely.
With over 500 PEOs, there are some that are dedicated to specific industries. But then there's also some that are more generalist, right? And they can do a lot of different industries and be more flexible to maybe who the HR person is or what industry the company's in. To what degree should you consider one that's specialized in a certain industry versus one that's more of a generalist kind of PEO in these situations?
Yeah, I mean, you can certainly look at specialized ones, the ones that have deep experience in certain industries. That does a couple things. Like one, it's credibility.
Yeah.
To some industries, from the client side, they certainly feel like you have to understand us. You have to know what it's like. This is common in manufacturing. This is common in nonprofit organizations, like where there's just a certain kind of frequency of that business that needs to be understood in order for an HR partner or solution to really match it. So sometimes it's valuable. I would say, though, that can largely be overcome if you understand the needs and priorities. Like the specialization of PEOs, that we are the manufacturing PEO or we're the tech PEO, is really not that valid. They all can do different things that are right. I've seen companies that have historically not been, that have been really tech centric in their targeting be not so good for tech. And I've seen some that are, have coined that they are the work comp shop, and they can do, all sorts of things in work comp, and really not be a powerful tool for an organization that needs that. So it ends up coming down to the actual needs, priorities, and kind of the psychographic of that decision maker as to what that support model needs to look like.
Okay. And I want to kind of dig into, what does a successful matchup mean? You touched on it a little bit, that they're able to do more of the things that they're good at as a CHRO, as a director of HR.
Mm-hmm.
How do you maybe like measure? How do you tell if it was the right match in over the length of that engagement for years to come?
Yeah, there are a few factors. Some like metrics you can certainly look at are, are you having zero defect payroll? Did every employee get their ID cards for their health insurance? Was the onboarding, successful, and did everybody get onboarded by the date? And those things should all happen all the time, but those are those are metrics you can look at.
You feel those right away.
Yeah, and you can just see them. They're in the system. You can see that it happened. The more the soft, kind of soft evaluation is the way that HR leader felt about it. One, did they feel elevated by this solution? Like, can they see a clear pathway to doing what they want to do more of as it relates to their current HR responsibilities? Two, did they feel supported? Like, were they running down people? Did they not have the answers? Did the PEO rep or PEO onboarding person like really not run the routes for them and make them feel like that this was white glove, as so many of the PEOs tend to describe their process. And then three, like, what did that disseminate through the whole organization? Did the employees feel like, hey, this was a really great decision. We are excited about the benefits. We can see this great technology. Like, was there immediate feedback? I would tell you, I've experienced it in my own career when I was with Insperity, where we did an excellent job and matched perfectly. And then, unfortunately it does happen, and it has, that it didn't match up correctly. We can go back and look at exactly why it was. And those were the reasons. Now I can see how important customer success being just sprinted at around that HR person or business owner. It's not just an HR thing, to make sure that they have that really good experience and fit and feel, elevated, supported, and that the impact was everywhere.
Yeah. Gotcha. When they've felt that and when it's been a successful matchup, do you notice that the HR department can still grow essentially with a PEO? I'm sure it's different for each organization, but I'm wondering, they still have a growth plan. There's still a ratio of, number of employees you get to an HR specialist or generalist that joins the organization. So you still see that growth? Is it just at a maybe smaller ratio? Or
it alters. If you were an HR person who had never been presented with the concept of HR outsourcing, and you were going to grow from 5 employees up to 200, you probably had some roadmap of when you were going to bring on a generalist or an assistant. So it's not that if you take that same road path, but now you're on the chassis of a PEO, it's not that you're going to not add HR individuals into your organization. It's just going to happen differently and at different intervals, as well as with different responsibilities.
Yeah.
And what's going to be better, frankly, is your HR generalist that you were going to hire maybe at, let's say, 60. Now you can hire at 80 to 100, but they're going to come into a highly professional HR environment. So now they are going to come in, they're going to have a better onboarding experience. They're going to be able to hit the ground running because they're not working through understanding all your manual processes and which sheet goes with this and that department and what have you. And then also all these, oversight steps you have to make on making sure the benefits get reconciled the correct way and checking up on every step in the process. So they can hit the ground running and actually get to work.
Yeah.
Two, just the reality is you can right size the hire as well. So if you were going to need somebody to be more tactical and more administrative heavy, now you can maybe split that into a couple of roles as opposed to one and actually get more support. So it just allows, so the infrastructure and support that a PEO provides doesn't necessarily mean you're never going to hire another HR person. It just alters maybe the pathway.
When we hear about the stats coming out of like NAPEO about how PEOs can help an organization, they say it lowers churn, you're less likely to go out of business, and there's kind of stat after stat. And now I'm almost wondering, of course, like a PEO would say that these are the stats for themselves, but it's almost, are they enabling the current HR to do the extra things like learning and development, for instance, that then put them in a position to reduce churn and have more learning and development, do these things that then actually have the impact? I'm almost wondering if that secondary effect is really one of the main things that keeps the organization on the path that they want to be on.
So this will be probably not the response you expected. So the answer is yes, it has the ability.
Yeah.
But does it happen? Unfortunately, no, or at least not enough. And here's why. It's because when a PEO comes into the office of an HR director, they are selling their PEO. And even if their PEO does not match up, they are trying to configure and oversell around it.
Yeah.
And that's where you create a stiff arm from HR because they feel threatened. Like they either feel that they either have this like, subconscious thought, like, I feel like I'm being sold to, and therefore now I feel threatened. Or this model that PEO sales rep X is describing is going to eliminate things that I either one, care about, or two, could eliminate me altogether.
Yeah.
So it doesn't happen because HR HR individuals are crucially important to the organization, especially when they have been a part of them for a long time. And so mirroring and matching what they need with the right solution is the only way to do what NAPEO suggests it can do.
Yeah.
But that's really hard when you are a sales rep and you've worked really hard to get into this business, and then you get that footprint of what the HR infrastructure and model looks like in the business today, and it doesn't match up with your PEO. Not many reps do the right thing and go like, hey, it just seems like you're in a good spot, and what I have in my bag here doesn't really line up with the gaps that you have.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen or happen enough. And so that's why that doesn't occur. But what I would say is that if you can find that way to not only have an authentic conversation with them, but then elevate that HR person to understand the things that they could do and just be real honest, like, hey, this is going to take some things off your plate. Some of the things we've just identified, you actually like doing. And so I'll ask you to have some patience with me as I talk about taking things away from you that you would otherwise want to keep in your sphere of influence. But I want to focus the conversation on how we can get you to doing other things that are really impactful to the organization, and ultimately will allow you to unlock the power of this model. If we can't get to that, then we're going to stop. Like that, because I know right now that if the second you feel threatened, our conversation is over. And so I might as well call that out now.
And I'll give a lot of credit to our PEO partners. It's great to see that they always offer to meet with the HR team, not only meet with them, but then show them all of the tools that they'll be interacting with. And they say, anyone who wants to see this, anyone who wants training on this, we'll speak with them, we'll talk to them. I've heard that on the calls we've been on, and I'm always like, oh, this is not the adversarial thing that's kind of existed out there. I've heard about. It is very much, a matching up of those two pieces to make a good picture.
We've got some wonderful partners who get that. The problem is, and I would say across the board, they do. It's just at a macro level. There still remains this, brick wall that exists because, the job market is one thing. And then also people like not wanting to feel threatened in their role and being outsourced is another. And so, being real with that and empathizing to an HR person will allow you to really align with them and then come up with a solution. And that solution might be not doing this PEO.
Yeah.
And you'd have to be comfortable with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that's a powerful conversation, and those who take that path will serve them well.
That's great. Was there anything we didn't touch on that you wanted to get to today?
No. I mean, I just want to know when when are you going to warm up?
Oh, that's a good point. I have a Hawaiian shirt with a few tigers on it that I think I'm going to start wearing now that it's springtime. So I might bust that out and we'll be matching in the next episode.
I don't think a Hawaiian shirt has tigers on it. I don't think that's a thing. I think
it's kind of
you've
a jungle, you know.
You've acquired some interesting attire there.
Yeah, I think I got it at Goodwill.
Well, they got good prices.
All right. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We will see you in 2 weeks. Episode
7.